Today, we are talking about things that all firms do with the different roles that people play in their firms. Every one of us, when we found a firm, we start out wearing all the hats. And then little by little, we start shedding the hats, taking them off. Ooh, bad hair day for me. So the question is, when does it make sense to make roles just completely specialized, a role by themselves? We have, through the years at Acuity, done all kinds of combinations of certain roles with multiple responsibilities lumped in together. Some have worked pretty well. Some have been disastrous and have not worked at all. So today on Drink While You Think, the happy hour conversation amongst a couple of weirdos, i.e. me and Matthew, we're going to talk a little bit about some of the roles that we've rolled out, where we've combined responsibilities and where some of like, no way, that's got to just be one thing and one thing only. All that today here on Drink While You Think. I'm your host, Kenji. And there's my buddy, my man, Matthew, my co-host. Matthew, who is our sponsor for today's episode?
Okay, we're getting a backdoor sponsor today, okay? Because they didn't send beer as per request,
Ooh.
but they sent cookies, and they officially signed up to be the first sponsor for AcuityCon 2024. So,
Ooh,
so
that's
and
big.
that
That's big.
and there is beer at that technically. So today's
and
sponsor
we
is
and we and we could use their we could use their sponsor dollars toward beer.
yes, that's what we're and wine. Today's sponsor for Drink While You Think is Bill, not Bill.com. Bill. Bill is God man, there's so many things they've combined now. Because we got
They
like
are
Invoice to Go, we got like Divvy, we got the normal bill, and now we've got the
so
reporting
much.
tool. So Bill, for all your AP and payables needs, no longer just that. We've got your Divvy, your credit cards, we've got your reporting. That's right. And we've got your invoicing. We've got it all at Bill. That's what I got for him.
Ooh,
It's
we
tough.
we we do kind of have it all with
Man,
Bill.
it's so hard not to say Bill.com. Like,
It is
just
hard to
so
say
hard.
that, right? It's
Yeah,
hard to
what are
say
you
that.
drinking,
And
dude?
well, Team Bill, huge shout out to y'all. That is awesome. We are super
Thanks,
stoked.
bud.
That's the earliest I think we've had a sponsor come in, and y'all have been with us from the very get-go. So that we really
Yeah.
do really appreciate y'all sponsoring AcuityCon. We can't wait to see y'all again. You're great folks. What are you pouring there? You're already going, Matthew. So tell me what you got.
Yeah, I'm pouring this is the Theoretical Jam Wheat Ale. This is another Cigar City.
Oh yeah.
So it's a 6%er. Looking forward to kind of you can see this is your relative. Well, no, this is more of my kind of beer. I
I
like the
think
wheat
you're gonna like
beers more
that.
than you.
I think you're, yeah, I think you'll like that, Matthew. That's kind of, I know you like some wheat ales and a little bit of flavor in there. You like a little bit of flavor in yours. I'm drinking kind of the, not the opposite, but this is a classic here. It is the good old Creature Comforts Bibo.
The
The
Marty Penny
Bibo,
special.
I was gonna say the official beer of Marty Penny. Well, maybe even, we'll do a link to his LinkedIn profile of Party Marty, the
Yeah.
accountant that should come out with us to a few more social events. The official beer of Party Marty, Bibo from Creature Comforts, another B Corp. We love that. Cheers, dude.
Cheers. That is one that is always at our Atlanta Falcons tailgate.
Mm,
We usually have Bibo at the tailgate. It
we
is one
do.
of
This
the
will this will
standbys.
be, I'm sure this is usually at AcuityCon. It's such a good, it's just a great, great, crisp, clear, good drinking beer. It is awesome. It's a great one. Real
I even
solid.
like Bibo.
I
So
mean, even Matthew likes Bibo. So if you like a good, crisp,
Mikey
classic,
likes it.
noble, good old Pilsner, this is a great Pilsner. Great Pilsner. Anyway, so I
I'm
was
liking
thinking
this
about
one too
this.
already too.
Are
So
you? Yeah. It's got a little, this is, this, people think that you only drink dark beer and you prefer that, but you like I think you've always liked a little bit of a wheat beer.
yeah,
So give it a little bit of character is what Matthew likes. Okay. It's almost like you and sauces with food you eat. Give it
yeah.
something. Give a little something there.
Give it a little something, something.
A little something, something. So, I was thinking about this week when we were at our offsite, our leadership offsite. We've done, I mean, 3 years of these now. We've probably done 12, 15. We've done a lot of offsites. And this is a time when we're digging in deep with EOS and we're looking at rocks. Also, we're looking at the accountability chart quite a bit, the org chart. and we're thinking about roles. So oftentimes we're trying to figure out how to address a challenge or just get into a new opportunity. We tend to think of like, ooh, we're going to need a person to help with something, right? And we started kicking around some interesting ideas this week. And it was like, oh, we need to go back and rethink some roles, and a couple of new roles kind of emerged out of it. And I was watching the team go through this exercise of thinking about these things. It made me think back to the history of Acuity and how all firms go to is like, well, yeah, you start with us doing kind of everything and you slowly start peeling off, you add people and you start peeling off roles, right? Bit by bit. We always called it, we and I love sports analogies, right? So we always called it the old player coach. That's kind of one
Player
way to
coach,
think of
yep.
it, player coach roles. And I think in some of those cases it works, whether it's player coach. And when we talk player coach, I guess maybe describe, Matthew, when we say player coach, what kind of roles are we usually describing?
We were usually describing like when we had a leader of a team of controllers, a leader of the CFOs, leader like tax leader. So right now our CFO leader and our tax leader player coach, they both tax leader does tax returns and does the supervision. CFO leader does the CFO like all the CFO assignments and does CFO work. But our accounting leader has grown now to where they don't do any accounting work. They just manage the
Yeah.
accounting stuff. So they're not a player coach. So we got two player coaches in the service lines and one non-player coach. So
If we stick to the service lines for a second, because I think this is where all firms are providing services, maybe talk a little bit about where you think the player coach role works and where it doesn't. Like, right, you mentioned we have it in a few places. We don't have it in other places. Is it purely a function of size and scale of the team, or are there other things do you think come into play with having, again, as we would say, the player coach is someone who's doing the work and also leading, managing people doing the same work. So what do you think works
yeah,
and what doesn't?
I think anything, any of those player coach roles that have a large component or have a component of their role that can take over their whole role at any given time is challenging. So, say onboarding, like if you're having a player coach do onboarding and their job, right? They're still client serving. Like if you have a flux of new clients, their clients go by the wayside, right? Or
Yeah.
if somebody's in charge of hiring and you need to hire 4 people, like that's all consuming, right?
Yeah.
So or it can be all consuming as you get clients moved around or stuff like that. So I guess how I've started thinking about it is if like if you can keep the roles recurring, like the player coach works well, like predictable and recurring. If it's less predictable or more sprint like, I guess, like you're just like bursty and like all consuming, it tends to break down a little bit. So
I would agree with you. I think that I was thinking, you mentioned bursty or in sprints. I was thinking kind of the same way of projects. The onboarding function is the perfect example because, again, every firm has this. Onboarding, you can kind of throw cleanup in there, right? When you bring on a new client, kind of onboard them, you got to go clean the books up, then you got to do it. And everybody starts with having to do a bit of all of that. And the problem, though, is those are super chunky work. It's like projects, cleanup. I don't know how long it's going to take. And while you're cleaning something up, it's really hard to do the recurring work. When you're trying to get them on
yeah,
board, it's hard to do the recurring work. So I think we found clearly, and I don't know if other firms would disagree or not. I'd love to hear some opinions on this. But to me, I think most firms are like, yes, when we get to the size and scale that we can afford to have those as discrete functions, those are feel pretty clear to me that people would do that. The only reason not to do it, the main reason not to do it early on is you just don't have, you're not quite the size and scale you can afford to. Would you
right.
agree? Like, I think most people would say, yeah, if I'm big enough, I got to have that as a discrete function.
I think most people agree
Maybe
with that.
most, maybe not everybody.
I think most people once they're 2.5, 3 million, like agree with that probably. Below
Yeah.
that, I think you probably have more
He's got to get it
discussion.
done. Yeah, he's got to get it done somehow. Got to get it through. That was I remember the days of us calling that we had those stages of like triage, we used to call it, like as another word for onboarding. triage and maintenance. We kind of used to think of it like the hospital function. Like, all right, you got to get them in and get the
You got to
patient
go to the
treated.
ER first before you could be admitted.
We can't get you on
We got
the
to know what's wrong. We got to know what's wrong first.
we can't get you on just the standard, regular healthcare plan. Like, let's just we need to get you off of life support and functioning first. And so we used to use some of those terminology, which may not have been the best to use, but I think those are ones that naturally made sense. And there may be a few downsides there. And I've heard this in some cases to where, and I've felt this at times with me, even though I'm not an effective accountant at all anymore. But you do when you're not serving clients, you lose a little bit of your game. Like let's say, because you're more recently have stepped out of client work. I heard you say something interesting. I think it was at the offsite. I can't remember. I think it was one of our exec team. You had to step back in and do a little bit of billable work for a client. What and you used to do that all the time. You build quite a bit. You kind of peeled it off bit by bit, and you were also leading the team. And then you got a couple of years ago, you got you to stop doing that. But you had to step back in recently. What was that? What was that like?
It's weird. I was like trying to find that gear.
That's what you
You're
said. I was wondering if you
like,
remembered.
like the clutch is broken on this car. I couldn't get it into the right gear. I don't know. I used to be like able to crank out that work. I would just grind and do that. I mean, I was a grinder, man. I'm on the work side, on the client service side. And I think most of us are in this industry at some point or other. We're just crazy grinders, right? Which is
It's a
hard,
it's a
which
different,
makes it
yeah.
hard to pull out and work on the business, right? So it was trying to go the other way. It's been kind of weird, especially since AJ left. It's been really weird going back into the crypto practice and having to.
Yeah.
I'm meeting with clients way more regularly this like the last like 6 weeks than I have in the previous kind of 18 months. So
Yeah. Yeah. And another place, so stepping out of the accounting side here a bit, for us on the sales function, and we won't spend a ton of time here because not every accounting firm has this, but um, I always remember reading about or hearing about what you don't want to do is take your best salesperson and make them like the sales manager, right? And that's happens in some of these roles. Like you don't want to take, oh, because you think naturally, oh, they're the best. So they're going to help other people. Like they're going to help be the best person to lead. And I think that happens a
right.
lot in sales. I guess I don't know, I'm trying to think through our experience on this because I think we've got a unique situation with Tyler, who's the leader over there. He's like, hands are really in it, but he does a really nice job of kind of leading. I think that's not the norm. I think that's a little bit not the norm. Typically, I know, well, maybe it worked opposite for us because we've had a sales leader in there who wasn't selling and it didn't work very well.
Well, I think the the more practical analogy on sales for people is people that are doing the sales themselves. And this was the when I
Mm,
when the sales was like you and me, right? Like this that was one of the things we didn't let go for a while, right?
right.
So when we were playing player coaching that, and I remember this thinking about the salespeople, we were starting to compare close rates, if you remember.
Yep.
And I was like, my sales close rate is like 75%. Like
Yeah.
their sales close rate is like 25%,
25. Yep. I remember that.
something like that. And then one of the salespeople goes, yeah, like, but you're not counting all the people you don't follow up on. like, like, like,
It's true.
like you just like get busy and just don't care. Like you're counting the ones that are like when you have the time you follow through on
And
versus
not just
like
the time,
all the leads.
it's like a very close personal friend or former client. Like it's like ooh, if I
Oh
don't
yeah.
follow up on this, there's going to be some not just business pain, some personal relationship pain if I don't
Yeah.
do this.
So then
That's
when I
important.
realized when I started tracking all the people I was losing in my inbox, like on the prospect that were like expressing interest, and I was just getting busy because I was doing client work, that's when I realized, oh, that's like a sales team doesn't not follow up on leads.
Exactly.
I
Right.
mean, that was a big oh wow, because I would be like, sure, I'll have a call with you and see what something else, and I'd give them advice, and then I'd just let it go. Like a salesperson does that and then like follows up like 20 times to get
I
the
know.
people to a decision. Like
Yeah.
I'm sure if I had done that, that we would have tons more clients back then, but my close rate would have been lower.
Would have been lower and you would have had zero time to do anything else.
And I had
Right.
zero time to
So,
do anything else. So
um, any other good, I mean, those are all examples, I think, of where you just, again, through scale and growth and focus, you start saying, hey, I'm going to go the specialization route. We're going to take the roles and specialize. We're not going to try to combine too many things at once. Let's flip it a little bit. Are there ones that we found like, oh, that works really well together? Like we didn't realize. I mean, and I guess in some of these player coaches, I think those do work well because there's a relatability with the team. They're doing some of the same work. They're very used to the processes, the client aspects, the tools. So some of what we talked about does, I think that player coach makes sense. Are there other roles do you think we've encountered that like, oh, combining a couple of things like that, not only is it cost effective and resource effective, like that naturally just makes things a little easier and simpler.
well, there are, but the way we got to find that out was like we threw the kitchen sink in it and then started pulling stuff out of that.
That's exactly right.
So
That's a,
I'm thinking of our ops managers who we
oh,
dumped the kitchen sink on. Um, but the thing that makes sense for us at this stage right now in the ops manager role was to add, um, so first of all, to take off cleanup, like to separate the concept of cleanup, like kind of check-ins and
right.
cleanup. Okay, taking the cleanup off the ops manager. So let them do onboarding, let them track the cleanup person who's doing the cleanup, right? That was a natural pairing.
Yeah.
But the thing that paired really well with that I didn't expect to pair really well was upsells down the road.
Oh,
So
yeah.
like
Great
triaging
point.
ticket, like so all the tickets come through like on the customer service side where somebody needs to intervene, they're the first level support and they do like getting the service level right. Like they do so much of that onboarding and the people remember them from onboarding and then they go back and go and right size the account, upsell or downsell. Like upsell downsell being with onboarding was super more productive than having upsell with
Back to
sales.
sales. Yeah. We used to kick it all the way back to sales. And so,
And I
but
didn't, man.
yeah,
Yeah.
that's a great example. So just to kind of step back on that one, these tickets that Matthew mentioned are internal tickets. For us, they signify like, yep, there's an issue or a transition. Oftentimes tickets mean there's a transition going on. We're trying to notify a team member trying to notify Acuity of like, yep, something's up with this. Maybe it's a pain point. Maybe it's like, oh, a transition. And so I think that what we realized was that the job of the ops manager, i.e. onboarding, it's purely transitional. They're trying to get people through, oh, we just close them as a client. We're trying to get them into this maintenance mode where we can kind of maintain them. So they're already really good and astute at transitions and cool. Let's do handoffs. Let's add something new. They're used to working with clients on who are in a state of change. And our clients, maybe they've been with us for a couple of years, we'll go through some states of change and they're already adept at that. So yes, upsells or adding new services is a great one that you're right. We had that, we missed that one. And all of a sudden we're like, oh, they're way more effective. We just thought, oh, you're upselling. That should go back to sales. They're the most effective at kind of walking through this again. And the poor salesperson who's not an accountant's got to go back, you know, 2+ years to when they met him the first time. It's just too many things have kind of gone cold and they're not really there to kind of help think through how a engagement changes over time. So that's a great one. Yeah, be thinking about that for those of you who have onboarding teams. They could be great resources for helping manage transitions and change upsells. That's a good one. That's a good one.
Yeah. I like that
Yeah.
one.
Yeah. What I know one that here's one that I think we're making progress on, but I think it's been hard for us. And I think it's hard for other firms. But again, another one I'm almost begging questions out there to the accounting universe, people who are doing this, is how do people handle verticals, like when you lead a vertical of like, oh, this is our expert in whatever your firm's into, right? It could be construction, or it could be crypto like us, or it could be whatever. Like
Yeah.
that
This is a
one, this is tough. Like we've struggled with this one, right? When you say,
well, I mean, this is the really hard one, right? And I would put like any technology specialist in this bucket too, or like staying up on technologies and stuff like that. The problem with like trying to put the vertical folks into a managerial role is like the vertical changes so fast. Like if you think of e-com, like A2X is changing all the time, Amazon's changing, Shopify's changing, whatever. If you come out of client service, you don't see those changes at the level that you need to be the
mm,
expert in e-com. Same as crypto, right? Like, so as we're trying to figure that out, like it's like, oh, there's like you can't really go to full management like mode.
right.
You almost have to have like an expertise road. I don't know what it looks like, right? So
It is
it's just
tough.
a
I mean, again, this is one. If we've ever had a plea out there of someone who this is working well for, please give us a shout because I think that you can all not always. I think most of our firms, we've had people who are there, hopefully, or who've come through who've just been absolute rock stars who can kind of do all kinds of things, a little bit of kind of unicorns, but like you don't want to think about having to find unicorns. And what I mean by that is when you need to know a vertical or a specific technical software, you are thinking kind of technical skills. And all of a sudden you're going, oh yeah, but the thing we've made a mistake of like, oh, technical skills, great. That means you're so smart and you know this. And all of a sudden, next thing I always find myself going, well, now you're going to lead this kind of practice of people who need to know this technical skill. And next thing you know, you're like in management land, like right, leadership land. And you're going, oh, there needs to be a way to disseminate that technical knowledge from that expert on the software or on the vertical, but like, does it always mean true leadership and management of individual people? And to me, man, I struggle with like, what does that look like? Because we've tended to go like, oh, here's a whole bunch of people to go ahead and manage and do their annual reviews for and do things. And that's trick. I don't know that those are necessarily together. I
yeah.
don't know what your take is.
As you're talking, I'm thinking the only thing similar in our careers was PPD, right? The technical office, the national office, whatever you called it in Big Four.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, that's right.
Like that's the closest analogy that I think, but like those companies are freaking huge. Like you had one person, two people in PPD for a region. Like and those regions were huge or three, you know?
Yeah, and
So
remembering back ages ago when you had those technical reviews, you had these subject matter experts in your global public accounting firm. Um, they had pretty small teams. Like you
they're
would,
pretty small, and that's like for
and they weren't
that's like
leading a big
for
team.
50,000 employees. Like they're
Exactly. So
that's got to be like
you
20
jump on those
people for
calls,
50.
right? With them, you did more of these than I did. You jump on those calls when you're trying to issue an audit, for something very technical or for a specific technical issue, and you'd have to get it cleared through, global or national, right? In these technical offices. And the audit team would jump on, the audit partner and all the people, and maybe you as a staff person would get to sit there and listen quietly, like in the room while it happened. But they'd go back and forth and say, hey, this is actually the correct way to handle, this stock-based compensation issue or whatever the heck it was, right?
Yeah.
And but they weren't doing it. Those teams were pretty small.
I know I was thinking what was Cherry's like at Cherry, it was like four people and there were 150 partners. So there's
Mm-hmm.
probably 1,000 people in the firm at the time. So
Yeah.
four per thousand. So one per 250 people, but you can't have like every expertise. That's interesting.
I wonder if this is a good one for us to think about, is because we're a pretty, I mean, who would not, everyone would say they're a people-based firm. I think we're fairly particular about trying to make sure we give a lot of good support to team members. We've found success in the more resources and help and support we give the team members, the better just things are. We retain clients better, team members are
Yeah.
happier. And so I think we have a natural bias toward, oh, somebody new who's strong, like where can they help other people? And I
Yeah.
think there's probably some times we should maybe be thinking, they don't need to be helping other people. Like they just need to get the answers right, which is probably what these technical offices do. Like, forget managing people. The answer is this. Here's how it needs to work. Maybe you roll out some training points. Maybe you roll out some guidance and like,
We
and
yeah, you used to
that's
have
maybe it.
what we had the A&A updates, the Freds, like
Oh
they all have different
yeah.
names, right? At all the different
All of
firms.
those. All of those, right?
Financial
So
reporting updates.
I mean, again, there's a good example for being specific. So I think that one's a really tough one, the verticals, because and again, maybe some other firms are like, hey, dummies, that's exactly how you do it. You let them stand alone as the vertical expert. They issue some guidance occasionally to the rest of the teams, but they're not out there managing the teams. I think that may be it. Maybe that's more of an Acuity thing that we've messed up over time. But I like there are some roles I think as you get bigger that are nice, kind of paired together. We've seen some as well too, to where it's been again, things that not every firm has. We have a quality control team, we have a QC team. We've seen some of those team members be really effective in a couple other spots too. Like, right, like,
Yeah.
oh, like sometimes like technical sales calls. We used to have that used to be really interesting when DMAC would jump on, like, and get really tricky
Technical
like
sales stuff.
yeah, because they could be sometimes you would think that I think a good sales team like we have, and I'm really proud of our sales team. I think they're just really solid. They're just super open to feedback. They're trying to close deals, but they're not trying to close every deal. They're trying to close the right deals. And so
Yeah.
getting someone, the QC team can be, and this is what we need them to be at times, kind of hard asses, right? Like this doesn't work. Like you can't do it this way, or it's going to break, right? So sometimes even bringing them earlier in the sales cycle, like where oh,
Ugh.
they're like, time out. We no, we are not pricing this way. Or we are not doing XYZ. Um, isn't necessarily just to be a wet blanket, but like, geez, a reality check that's helpful for the sales team. Like, oh, I didn't know I was about to step into that trap, right?
Yeah.
So
Yeah, that's good. Yeah, we got our ops managers that like to give sales feedback too. So all the
that's true.
onboarders,
They're good. I mean, and I think
they
that's
keep
a
them they keep sales pretty honest on the back end, but DMAC did a good job keeping them on the front end. So
they definitely do. They definitely do that. Um, any other combined roles you can think of that like
what did we not combine? Well, I
yeah,
think the
what
one
we distribute. We always combined everything, and then we
I
have them
don't
kind of
know
pared down.
if combine I can think of another combined role. I mean, we could probably sit here and think of lots of combined roles, but like if there was and I think this is the last 18 months I've had this realization, like when we started doing job descriptions and formal job descriptions, we started breaking, not thinking of roles as 100% roles. So I think that's a useful thing that when I broke my mindset, like they have to be an ops manager, like we started saying, okay, this ops manager is an ops manager 75% of the time, and they could do like process improvement 25% of the time. But not
Yeah.
all ops managers are that. Like when it grows, like that role, that 75% might grow to 100, and we'll get somebody else to do process improvement, right?
Yeah. Yeah.
So I think we have pie charts now for those of you who are nerds talk about for people that have multiple roles within the organization, showing making sure it adds up to 100 and not more than 100.
Please
But
tell me
like
it
you can
does. Yeah.
see, like,
Be pretty
oh,
excited
this is
accountants if it
supposed to only
didn't.
take you half of your time. This is supposed to take the other half of your time, that kind of thing. That that evolution for us, I think, is helpful and helped us think about all the things we're putting on people's plate as well.
I agree. Yeah. And so, yeah, if you look at our accountability chart, you'll see that in there. Matthew like actually goes out there and puts percentages,
Okay.
by
On the
roles.
partial
I mean,
roles, like I
on the
think it's
partial roles, on the
important to be
partial
like,
roles.
it's fair because you're like, okay, they do special projects, but only 10% of their time can be dedicated to that. So
And
like
we're
you
not
can't just
saying
be
they're
like,
right all the
okay,
time, but we're saying if they skew from that, I've heard that before, like, well, I thought it was supposed to only be at 25% this. And it's like, well, that was our guess. If it's not, let us know. Like we'll adjust it. But we're trying to just depict this is a fractional role. We think the time allocation should be this. And if it's not, like let us know. We'll adjust to it, right? But that is the reality of firms and starting a firm is you do need these different responsibilities, functions, and roles, but you got to get creative to get there. And sometimes these can be great long-term pairings. I mean, who said that one person should only do one thing, right? So giving people some variety, giving people some ways to pair certain functions that just make it more efficiently. Like, why pass a baton 30 more times and let the whole telephone tree make things messy if it doesn't have to be, right? That's a bad experience for team members, for clients. In other cases, you're doing it temporarily. Fractionalizing, saying, when we get to this point, we're gonna go ahead and make this specialist, right? Because there does become a point with some of these rules where it is too difficult for an individual or a team to hold all the responsibilities in their mind. There's too many projects happening while you're trying to do regular cadence things. And so I think that's a way to be cognizant and just thinking about it. The last one I'll mention, we've had some success with, and we're still working on, is having things like a tech stack team. You kind of alluded to it earlier. Somebody helping when you get a little bit bigger, make some decisions on what the best technologies to use internally. We're still working on that one. That's a tricky one too. Like, we've always erred on, let's make sure it's people who use the tech. The problem we get into is those who are typically at the conference getting the highest exposure level initially to tech vendors are founders, and some of them, especially like us, but other founders too. We're not the ones using the tech. The team's really close to it. So I've always felt like that's to keep honest on like what really works, so that you don't come back with conference syndrome and like, hey, I talked to them and they were really fun. They took me to a cool dinner and I got this cool water bottle from them. Like, we're using them. Like, to avoid that, you need some people there. Like, listen, we're the ones living with these tools. Like, I gotta go tire kick the hell out of this thing and make sure it actually works, because I don't care how expensive or fancy the dinner was or how cool they were. Like, this damn thing's got to work. So
That's pretty funny.
that's one I think that people need to consider. But we'd love to hear from all of you in a couple of those areas. What roles have worked for you well to fractionalize? What ones are driving you crazy? How do you handle verticals? That is just a funky one. We have not been great at that one. We've overwhelmed our team members and not helped them as much as we could. So I'd love to learn from some other folks out there about ways that it has worked for you, specifically in verticals. But all right, let's rate up some beers here, Matthew. The Bibo for me is just, this one's always just a classic. This is such a great drinking beer. I'm not going to give it a crazy high rating, but to me, this deserves a good 4.0. It's a great Pilsner from a great brewery. You can just kind of crush it all the time, which I typically do. That's why it's in my refrigerator right now. It's kind of always ever present. Great Pilsner representative there. Matthew, I know you're drinking the Cigar City, right? That's the
the theoretical jam. It's the wheat ale. There it is.
What?
You had it. You almost had it.
I
There it
couldn't
is.
spell it. Luckily, the theoretical jam. Matthew, how did you feel about the theoretical jam?
I'm bringing this one all the way to a 4.25. I'm like, it get a little bit of a surprise bump for like kind of a pleasant surprise of a finish, and like it's just a nice little, man. That's nice.
And what does it have in it again? It's got like it's
This one says it's like I
some kind
was
of
just reading
berries.
the back. It's flavors of juicy red berries, leading to a distinct acidity, a lingering kind of grapefruit zest and bitterness. Flavors paired with wheat are reminiscent of berry jam on toast.
Well, I mean, who the hell doesn't like that? That just sounds amazing right there. What we're learning here, people, is Matthew's he's got a wide palate. He's not just one note. But
I've got a soft side.
Guess what he doesn't like? He does not like boring beers. Don't give Matthew a boring beer.
Oh, boring beer.
I can get down with some boring beers if they're done well. So anyway, appreciate y'all jumping on. Cheers to you, Matthew. Thank you to Team Bill, who are coming to AcuityCon. We can't wait to see y'all. We can't wait for AcuityCon 2024. Thanks for being our first sponsor of the year.
Yeah, you too could sponsor AcuityCon.
You too. You can sponsor Drink.
Call us on that one. You don't just send send a check.
You can sponsor Drink What You Think, AcuityCon, or if you want to be badasses like Bill, you can just sponsor both.
There you go. That's it.
Cheers, everyone. See you next time.